everybody. As you're probably aware, we're coming up on a very big election soon. The election of the next president of the United States. How does that actually happen? You might think that everyone in the country votes, and we tally up all those votes, and whoever has more wins the election, and most of the time you'd be right. But the presidential election is a little different. Enter the Electoral College. The name might be confusing, but the Electoral College, to quote the US National Archives, is actually a process, not a place. And it's a process that's been part of the US Constitution since it was first signed in 1788. The process starts with 538 electors, though to start with, it's easier to think of them as points. Each state in the US gets assigned a number of these points based on the number of senators and congressional districts they have. What that basically means is that the more people that are in your state, the more points that it's worth. Here is what those points look like right now. On election day, citizens in a state vote for their favorite candidate, and whichever one gets more votes, aka the popular vote, that candidate gets all of the points that that state is worth. Remember, there are 538 of these points, and you need a majority to win, so a candidate needs at least 270 points to have more than their opponent and win the election. To make this a little easier to understand, here's how these points shook out in the last presidential election in 2016. All the states in red gave their points to Donald Trump and the Republican Party, and all the states in blue gave all their points to Hillary Clinton in the Democratic Party. All the points got tallied up. Donald Trump had 304 points and Hillary Clinton had 227, so Trump won the election. So that's a very basic rundown of the Electoral College, but it's actually a lot more complicated than that because those points we talked about are actually people. They're called electors, and what happens is sometime before the election, the Republican and Democratic parties in each state select people who will be their state's electors. Each state has their own rules for how they do this, so taking the time to explain it would be a long time and it'd be very confusing. So we're just going to move past that. What you really need to know is that on election day, the party that wins the popular vote of their state gets to have their electors cast their votes, points, for their party's presidential candidate. So when you vote in the presidential election, you're actually casting your vote for who gets to cast their vote in the election. If that sounds complicated and kind of confusing, it's because it is, and it's led to some interesting situations. For example, you might ask, do these electors have to vote for whoever wins their state? And the answer is, sort of. Most states have laws that say that an elector must vote for their party's candidate if they win, or will be replaced if they don't. But there's no federal, countrywide law that says this. 99% of the time, it's not a problem, and it's never changed the outcome of an election. But in 2016, 8 Democratic electors and 2 Republican electors cast their vote for people who weren't even in the election. This was super unusual. 2 of those people were replaced, and 1 changed their vote back to the right person, but 7 of those votes went through, which is why, if we look at this map again, those numbers don't add up to the normal 538 electors. They add up to 531. Another interesting thing is that because of the way that the Electoral College works, a candidate can get less total votes from the people of the United States, but still win the election because they have more points from electors. This has only happened 4 times in US history. Rutherford B. Hayes, Benjamin Harrison, George W. Bush, and Donald Trump all won their elections even though more people, the majority of people in the United States, voted for their opponents. Quirks in the system like this have led some to argue that we should get rid of the Electoral College and just go by the popular vote. But others argue that the college keeps the power of the election with the states instead of with the federal government, and gives smaller states more of a voice when they can sometimes be overshadowed by the larger states. The best part is that you get to think about it and decide what you believe. Either way, though, the Electoral College is an incredibly important part of our elections in our country, so it's really important to understand how it works. But Miss Erika, I might hear you say, I'm not 18 yet, I can't even vote. And right you may be, but there's still something very important that you can do. Ask your parents if they're registered to vote. Ask your aunts and uncles, ask anyone, any adult you know. If they're not, you can tell them to just go to vote.org, and it takes just 2 minutes to get registered. Voting is our most powerful tool and our most important duty as American citizens. So help us adults make sure that we use it.